So no matter how we look at it, uh, Ukraine is basically completely occupied. It's just a matter of a month, possibly two, before Ukraine is completely taken over by Russia. So, in order to save uh, Ukraine at this point, my opinion would be to uh, let Putin save face and at the same time save Ukraine, or in my view, 50% of Ukraine. So, in order for this plan to work, we would have to negotiate an immediate ceasefire. Vladimir Zelensky would have to negotiate an immediate ceasefire based on this plan, which is what I call the Dnieper ceasefire, named after the river Dnieper. So here's what and I'll explain this thing in more detail. It's very difficult to explain all parts of it in this video, but here's what my plan suggests. Negotiate an immediate ceasefire with Vladimir Putin. That way he has an off-ramp, an ability to seize military operations, like he called it. At the same time, we are able to save 50% of Ukraine. The river Dnieper goes all the way through and divides Ukraine practically in two parts. So here's what my suggestion is to NATO and to our administration here, the Biden administration. I could give them more detailed plan, but this is what my basic suggestion is here. So the river Dnieper runs all the way from just north of Kiev, east of Kiev, all the way down into the Black Sea. So in order for an immediate ceasefire to take place, we would have to let Vladimir Putin or Russia keep literally the half of Ukraine, which parts of it he's already destroyed. When you look at the Donbass area and parts of Crimea, Mariupol, these are basic. Mariupol is basically leveled. It's not really even there anymore. When you really look at it, there are people still there, and in order for the West to save these individuals living in Mariupol and some of the other key cities there on the eastern side of the river Dnieper, I would suggest we basically let Vladimir Putin keep 50% of Ukraine at this point, dividing it in east and west, kind of like what East and West Berlin was. I know it seems kind of unusual to even suggest this at this point, but if you look at the current circumstances and where we're at in the invasion of Ukraine, Ukraine is basically lost. There is really nothing left there except for us to keep our troops in Poland and the other NATO areas there, NATO countries, and hope to God that he doesn't move into NATO at that point. This way, my suggestion is let him keep basically Vladimir Putin keep the eastern eastern side of River Dnieper. So when you're looking at the way the river comes all the way down from Belarus and runs all the way into Black Sea, it, as I mentioned before, it literally divides Ukraine in two parts. Right now, the eastern flank is basically taken over by Russia at this point. When you look at Mariupol, Kherson, all the way up from Kharkiv, it's basically in his control, and he's leveling it out, he's grinding it. There's still a ton of people living in these areas, but when you look at, as time progresses, he's going to take it over. It's a certainty. When you look at what's going on the ground, it's just a matter of time. So my suggestion is anything east of the river, let Russia keep it, even though we're going to lose, Ukraine is going to lose its agriculture belt and its industrial belt on the southeast part, which is basically what he was after. Because of such a high inflation in Russia, he figured this is a time for him to move. COVID was killing him. Before that, it was just a ton of problems Putin was dealing with. So this whole thing is not about just taking over Ukraine for Vladimir Putin. It's a way for him to save his economic life there in Russia. And whenever you look at what I learned from the masters before, I learned this personally from Dr. Brezinski. Zbigniew Brezinski was a former national security advisor to Jimmy Carter and a key part of Center for International Studies. He's the one that taught me that whenever you look at a specific question, it's never about that, it's about something else. So Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine to Russia was not about Ukraine, it was about economics. It's very simple. It's not a very, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out what Russia is really after. He's after the natural resources, because he's after that the southeastern industrial belt and the agricultural belt, which is something that's a key part of Ukraine. So in order for this thing to work, Kiev or Vladimir Zelensky would have to negotiate an immediate ceasefire with Vladimir Putin to keep the capital and divide the country and let Russia keep anything east of the river. So basically you're looking at a similar scenario like East and West Berlin. And naturally I can't go into any more details on this video, but when you look at, when anyone looks at what I'm saying, it is a functional thing at this point. It's very realistic in order to avoid Third World War, because this is where we're heading. The next move for Vladimir Putin is to use chemical or biological weapons, which would escalate this whole event into a World War-like situation. It's unavoidable at this point. So when my suggestion is purely based on my own research and my own understanding of the region and why Putin decided to move into the parts that he's in right now. If you look at it, he's basically using dilatory tactics when it comes to the capital, but then he's pounding the southern part of southeastern part, which is a key part of the industrial and the agricultural belt. Mariupol, 13 metric tons come in and out of, it's traded from Mariupol. So he's basically leveling out this city in order to save it and keep it for himself. So we know this entire thing is about economics to Vladimir Putin in order to save his nation from that 24% inflation that he's dealing with. So when you look at the southern and southeastern part of Ukraine, you got the industrial belt, you got the agriculture belt in the southeastern part of Ukraine, where Luhansk and Donbass area is, which he already was basically occupying for the last many years. So we absolutely cannot let him have Odessa. Odessa is going to be the key point there. If Ukraine loses Odessa, Ukraine is basically no longer a functional state at that point. It's a failed state completely, because that's the lifeline. Odessa, the port city of Odessa, is a lifeline, which is something which gives Ukraine access to the Black Sea. So without Odessa, Ukraine is a dead nation, a failed state. So this is how I would settle this at this point. You could call it the Dnieper ceasefire agreement at this stage, and let Vladimir Putin keep eastern flank of Ukraine and negotiate basically this. Well, naturally, there's a lot of details to this kind of an situation, and I can't explain all of it in the video here. But if the Biden administration picks up on this, I urge them to at least give this thing, the Dnieper ceasefire, a chance, and let's see if we can avoid Third World War here. So, because the next situation, the next level from this is an escalation due to the use of chemical weapons, which we know Vladimir Putin is about to use on parts of Ukraine in order to flush out the population, in his opinion, and that's exactly how he's looking to do it. And it is an extreme danger to the NATO nations in the Baltic states there. This is not going to be very pretty if he uses chemical or biological weapons, because it basically puts it into a different point of no return, so to speak. So I would suggest at this point, give this ceasefire, the Dnieper ceasefire, which is what I'm calling it, and a chance. This way, Vladimir Zelensky gets to keep 50% of that nation, and he has access to Odessa, the port of Odessa, which gives him access to the Black Sea and saves his nation. He is going to lose the agriculture belt and the industrial belt, but these are something that it could always be negotiated in the settlement as far as the NATO and United States is concerned. So in order for this thing to work, there are some key parts that Ukraine would have to give up, or the NATO would have to agree to that, where the settlement is basically the natural gas, a quarter of natural gas that flows into Europe comes in by Ukraine. And that could start flowing again into Europe, because Europe is also suffocating from the lack of natural gas flowing into the European Union. So I would give this a chance. In order to save Ukraine, we have to lose half of Ukraine. If the Biden administration understands this point, it is a key point. We let Vladimir Putin save face. At the same time, we save half of Ukraine and the lifeline of parts of the quarter of natural gas flow that comes in through Ukraine will restart again under this settlement. So it's a very functional ceasefire agreement. I have all the other components to it. I can't disclose everything because of, naturally, it's difficult to explain things in a 15-minute video. So I'm gonna do my very best. If someone calls me, I can give them some information on it, but whether it's policymakers or what have you. But this is, in my opinion, really the only way to save Ukraine and avoid a third world war like situation.